Good evening, welcome to Central News for Friday the 20th of September. I'm Hilary Entwistle. In today's news, Tauranga builders are calling for swift change and accountability from Tauranga City Council as the number of building consents rises in the city. Jarrah Construction owner Justin Hess says more accountability is needed from Council as consent prices balloon and Council's consent processing time lengthens. He says 10 years ago consent cost $3,500 and now it can cost anywhere from $14,000 to $16,000. Priority One statistics show in the last 3 months, residential building consents have sat above 150. In June, there were 155 consents lodged, which rose to 208 in July before falling to 164 in August. There will be no Waikato District Health Board staff attending a Hamilton City Council organised public meeting about community water fluoridation on Monday the 30th September due to personal attacks. The decision to remove fluoride from the Hamilton water supply was made in May by a tribunal at the council. Since then, many have asked for a public referendum on the issue with strong support from the Waikato DHB. Population Health Medical Officer of Health, Dr Felicity Dumble, says City Councillors asked their staff to organise the meeting after they decided to hold a referendum on adding fluoride to the public water supply. The meeting's purpose would be to provide an opportunity for Waikato DHB and Fluoride-Free Hamilton to present their positions on the referendum question. Waikato DHB Chief Executive Craig Klimo says the major reason for his staff to not attend is simple. His team are the subject of ongoing personal attacks from the anti-fluoridationists and he won't expose them any further. Now for our region's weather for the weekend. Hamilton, your Saturday will be raining with northerly winds. Your expected high is 18 and an overnight low of 11. Tauranga, your Saturday will be raining, but it will ease to drizzle. Your expected high is 18 and an overnight low of 12. Some heavy rain on your Sunday, Hamilton. It is predicted to ease to showers in the afternoon though, and a westerly change. Your expected high is 16 and an overnight low of 9. Sunday for you, Tauranga, is predicted to be drizzly with more rain in the afternoon and a westerly change. Your expected high is 19 and an overnight low of 10. Just ahead, tackling the widening gap of New Zealand's rich and poor. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. A Tauranga local is about to release his 16th book titled Millennium 3, Unresolved Issues of Our Times. George Bryant aims to challenge us to think about why we haven't resolved the 12 issues he thinks plague our society. Here is the second part of our interview with him. You write about politics in your book, so what do you have to say about New Zealand's politicians?
Oh, we've got good politicians and bad politicians. That's not the problem. The issue is the style of government we have. Now, we've got confrontational politics. We have party system, you have confrontational politics. And you have one side doctrinarily hitting the other side doctrinarily. And what happens is you get a party in power, and they want to stay in power, and they introduce legislation to combat a certain social issue. Then you get another party, different persuasion in power, they combat it in a different way, and so you're playing political football with social issues which concern all of us. The liberal versus the conservative, if you like. In the book I've got a chapter on life and death issues, abortion, euthanasia and those sorts of issues. And the liberal versus conservative philosophies all along the line are part of the problem. Until we get a non-partisan council in New Zealand or a non-partisan group that will look at these issues dispassionately, we're always going to have this confrontational yin-yang sort of approach. So I think one of the answers is to get a think tank. I think Owen Glenn was getting onto this with his child abuse issue, but he's had problems, of course. But a national think tank, non-partisan, with the political will to do something, say, about poverty, then things will start to happen.
You have a chapter called The Dying Family. What is that about?
Well, it's been a well-known fact for ages that the family situation in New Zealand is getting worse and worse. Families are breaking up all the time. Part of the problem now is, of course, we have a different definition of families from what we used to have. Families seem to be anybody who happened to be living together. And we need to tidy up what we mean by family. But family breakdown in New Zealand is among the highest breakdown of family life in the world. So we do need to do something about that. But read the book. It's all in there.
You also have a chapter called Is the World Warming Up? Is the world warming up?
I've looked at global warming, or climate change as some call it. There has been a lot of argument about that in the last few years, and New Zealanders have written books about it. I've examined all of that, and is it a con, as Mr. Wishart would have us believe, or is it not? Is it for real? So I've looked at the scientific viewpoints on it, and I won't say what I think, but the pros and cons are there in the book, and some suggestions are made at the end of that chapter.
Do you think politics have a place in global warming then?
That's not the reason why the climate is changing, but politics have something to do with solving it, and that's where the issue is at the moment. What can governments do if we believe that there's increased carbon dioxide and monoxide in the air? What can governments do to solve it?
You have a chapter called Big Brother. Are we being watched?
Well, I think New Zealand is increasingly becoming George Orwellian. Big Brother is on the move, faster than we think. I've opened up in the book a chapter about that which will raise people's eyebrows. Now, the protests against the GCSB bill is only one issue, and people don't realise that that is not the key problem. Walk down Queen Street and you've got hundreds of cameras looking you in the face all the time. You've got people behind the scenes viewing everything you do. You can break into your cell phone now, your internet, your emails. There's a lot of things been going on in society which people are really not aware of that are depriving us of our privacy. Even your car licence has about 8 things registered in Wellington, which are sold to other organisations, insurance companies and so on, about your personal life.
Is there a solution for that?
Is there a solution to Big Brotherhood? That would be a difficult one, but I've got a few suggestions in the book, so I think you need to read that.
You are quite an established author. You've written 16 books. So what are some of the other books that you've written? Well, I wrote a book about adolescent girls' education when I was running a high school. I wrote the biography of the social credit leader in the 1970s, Bruce Beetham. I wrote the story of World Vision, overseas aid. I wrote the story of Birthright New Zealand, a welfare organisation. I wrote my own autobiography. I wrote a book about a whole lot of stories about people who have overcome great difficulties, great odds, and moved on to help other people. I've written wrote a book about poverty, the widening gap. I wrote a book about the future of New Zealand. Back in 1980, I tried to look ahead at 2001 and see what would happen. Why do you want to write books about these really deep, hard facts, these social issues?
My mission in life is not to write novels. It's not to write books about honey or flowers. Because of the experience I've had running a high school and ministering to people in various ways and helping people and working in society, I've become involved in social issues, and that's where I'm at. I just like to untangle the issues of society and try and help it move forward, make some progress, challenge people, make them think. All bookshops in about 3 weeks will know about it. Whether they stock it or not is over to them. So people can go to the local bookshop and say, hey, I want Millennium 3. They'll have to get it for them. They can get it off Daystar Books Limited, which is publishing it. Or if they can find out where I am and look at my website, they can get it off me.
George Bright's book, Millennium 3, Unresolved Issues of Our Time, will be released on the 26th of September. Coming up next, we look at amalgamation in the Waikato. Welcome back. The Hamilton Property Council has been busy promoting amalgamation as the way forward for the Waikato region. Believing that Hamilton must follow in the footsteps of Auckland's super city, the Property Council says that although it would be a bold move, it is a necessary one if Hamilton wishes to remain competitive. Thomas Gibson was part of the committee working on the amalgamation proposal, and I spoke with him to see what he believes it could look like.
So we, in our position paper, have put forward a general proposal and then put some specifics around that. We see it as being a unitary authority, probably including most of the Waikato region as it's known now, probably not including Thames Coromandel District Council and Taupo District Council, because they have quite different drivers really for their local economies.
So how long have you guys been working on this? How long has it been a work
So we've
in
had
progress?
a subcommittee running for about 18 months. We've been looking at the issue from all kinds of angles, discussing it as a group, talking to local councils, talking to mayors, talking to other stakeholders and getting a sense of what the issue means for them.
So has the Auckland Super City affected the Waikato?
Definitely. The real point about Auckland is it makes other amalgamations inevitable. You can't have a third of the country under one council and then 79 councils or so for the rest of the country. So it's inevitable, I think now, with what's happened in Auckland, that there'll be change elsewhere. And that's what we see. Wellington's talking about change, Wairarapa, Hawke's Bay, other areas. They're all looking at what amalgamation might mean for them as well.
So what are the benefits of amalgamation for Waikato?
Key thing is regional voice. We don't want to get left behind Auckland by being a balkanised area with a lot of different voices going on. So regional voice is key. There's also efficiencies, cost savings we believe. The Mayoral Forum is already producing some information on cost savings from shared services, let alone a greater amalgamation. There's also an ability for developers and other users to have more consistency about what they get out of councils.
Does the Waikato Mayoralty Forum not go far enough?
No, it doesn't. It's a great idea. We commend them on it. But at the end of the day, it depends too much on goodwill, too much on individual councillors, mayors, CEOs working together in a positive way. That doesn't always happen. That's why what we think is necessary is structural change, actually getting the structure right that sits underneath those mayors and CEOs.
What does amalgamation look like for Waikato? Is it just one big council? Is it,
It is a unitary authority, but underneath that would sit local boards. So we actually think it's a great way of achieving both a better region and better localism. It's not just about having a super city or anything like that. It's about actually recognising the different communities that make up the Waikato. Through those local boards, we can get people more involved in what's going on. I know people are conscious of losing their voice, but at the end of the day, very few people vote in local body elections already. This is a great way to show them that it can make a difference for them locally rather than being something too big.
There could be impacts, couldn't there? Because the South Waikato, governing the South Waikato is quite different to governing the Hamilton city, which is a growing city, and the South Waikato's in decline. How do you govern two really completely opposite areas?
So there are different demographic drivers, different economic drivers certainly, but it's important to remember what we're talking about is governance. That's the oversight of what's going on in all the areas. We're not talking about individual representation, which can be done with in different ways. We're not talking about how communities do things, because a lot of communities can do things themselves. They don't actually need local government there to do it for them. So it's about having that regional governance layer and then the localism underneath that.
With amalgamation, is there the risk of, things like the RMA being overlooked and, district plans and these kind of things, and these laws that have been put into place? You widen the scope. Do you think there could be that risk that some of these could be? So
RMA reform is trucking along, I suppose, to some extent, and we don't know exactly what that will look like when it comes out. But we're very conscious, one of the problems at the moment for many people is the complexity of district plans. Even professional developers, even professional planners will have a lot of trouble keeping up with the volume of plans that are produced. The system is simply too complex and it doesn't really serve anyone. No one knows what's really in the contents of their district plan because of how many documents there are and how sometimes inconsistent they are. So what we're saying is one clear plan, particularly a spatial plan for the region, which sets out what the region should look like. And then we want to have underneath that some very simple documents which attach to particular communities. So Cambridge, for example, has its own character to it. You can still recognise that without having an individual district plan for the Waipa district. You can still have the special recognition of the character of Matamata without having to have its own district plan for Matamata-Piako district.
So theoretically you're talking about small towns having their own little, not district plan, but a small town plan?
Yes, as long as you have consistent standards at the top level, you can drill down underneath that and have special recognition of individual communities, very much so. There's no way you want to take away the special characteristics of those communities. They are special. They're Heartland New Zealand. You can't ever want to take that away from them. But what we don't need is a district plan consultation process, a 700-page plan for Hamilton, a 600-page plan for this other council, all sitting along very inconsistent, very hard to use, not user-friendly at all.
And I mean, I suppose the big thing is debt. That's the big key word around elections at the moment. Do you think amalgamating Waikato will impact on that debt?
Yes. The issue is partly about debt, but though it's not all about debt, because the thing is, we can take all the debt, we can put it in a pot like they did in Auckland and distribute it out again, but the issue is so much bigger than that. We could take the other tack and split up debt and assign it to different districts. We can do those, we've got the options there, but the issue is more than debt. It's about the regional voice, making sure we're heard in central government as well.
Well, thank you very much for coming in, Thomas. It's definitely food for thought and we'll see how it all pans out.
Great, thank you for having me. Cheers.
To download the initiatives for Hamilton Blueprint, go to Hamilton Property Council's website, propertynz.co.nz, where you will find more information on future plans and amalgamation. Coming up next, we stick with local government, but in Tauranga. If you have just joined us, welcome to Central News. Local body elections are just around the corner and many of the matters council govern affect your day-to-day life more than you may think. The Tauranga Chamber of Commerce carried out a survey recently on areas the business community feel needs improvement. I found out the results. How do people respond when asked, how council could be more supportive of the business community?
They could work from that assent. Yes, we'd like to work with you. Yes, we can do this. Let's solve some of the challenges. So that there isn't always that work from no and then try and solve things. It was much more, yes, you've got this 80% over the line, there's some other stuff we need to do. And I think that would help the business community just... What I think when people say no, they instantly see the dollar sign start to churn, and that always scares people, that instant that it's suddenly going to cost a huge amount of money that they hadn't budgeted in. And so that sort of yes means it may still be the same amount of money, but they've got that initial affirmative answer. So I think if you can remove a few more of the hoops and make it easier to work with it would be business friendly. Having said that, we all talk about a business-friendly council, and I'm not sure what that actually means. Does it mean that you haven't given me the answer that I want, therefore you're not business-friendly, or across the board are there some behaviours that we could all change in here?
What was said about the events budget?
That was a very interesting, and it's obviously I've got a personal interest in this one, and it was very interesting that actually more people across the board wanted more money put into major events into the city, which is reassuring. I think that says that the business community understand the importance of what events can bring to the economy. And that could be any kind of event, not just a sporting event, a cultural event or an art event. And so I think I found that particularly important. And a lot of that, in fact, it was over 31% wanted more than $1 million put into events in the city. So given that response, there is a strong understanding of that importance.
Is that because it will be raising that tourism?
Yes, and it gives that sense of vibrancy. If you've got something happening in your city every month, week, there's a whole lot of new people in the city and there's a whole lot of things going on. To be fair, Taupo Council do that really, really well. They have something happening every weekend. There's a reason to be in Taupo. That doesn't necessarily happen here in Tauranga. And I would suggest that this council isn't overly some of the councils are not overly friendly towards events and don't see it as a driver, they see it as a cost, or that cost against investment. So some would say it's an investment, others would say it's a cost.
Question 11, what has been achieved by council in the last 3 years? What were the results there?
Not a lot. Sadly, there was a sense of there hadn't been any great milestones, any great things achieved. I'm positive that there have been, but if it's not visible or not articulated well, then it is a reflection back on the council that things haven't been done. And so that's a sad reflection. Is it that they're not communicating well about the things that have happened, or they're just not getting those things done? You know, I could talk to several things that I think they've been working behind the scenes, and in 3 or 4 years you'll see a lot of advancement again. But nothing happens overnight in council. You know, it takes years of discussion and years of consulting, and it's to the point sometimes where it's overworked or overthought, and it's a bit of a shame that you can't just, like the business community, make a decision, get on and do. And that's where the tension lies with the business community. They make a decision, tomorrow they work on it. Council then start a whole process that slows things down.
Were there any other interesting comments that were made?
No, I felt that the survey was probably reflective of where the business community sat. The surprises were the ones we've talked about, which is that more events, more stronger economy, more support of the agencies such as Priority One and Chamber of Commerce to make the economy stronger. So those were not surprising, but they were validating what we as an agency might think of. So there wasn't huge, oh my God, I didn't think that was going to happen, but there was quite a lot in there. So I was really pleased with the responses. And again, the respondents were a measured, well thought out number of people across the board in the business interests that responded to the survey.
To view the survey results, you can do so at tauranga.org.nz. That is the news for today and this week. We really want you to be involved, so like us on Facebook, let us know your views. Next week, we are bringing you the potential mayors of your council. Check out our Facebook page to see which date your council will be on. I'm Hilary Entwistle. Have a lovely evening and a fantastic weekend.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.